Hi, Renee.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Amelia Vogler, and I am a grounding and energy medicine specialist and your host in the Energy Magazine exclusive interview series. Today, our special guest is Renee Baribeau. Nope, sorry.
You did it so great.
Well, I know, you know what? I screw the intro up every time. I'll
Oh,
just
it's
start
hard
over
when
for
you're
our
reading the
editing
script.
person because she'll like me better that way. Okay, take two. Hi, this is Amelia Vogler, grounding and energy medicine specialist, and your host in the Energy Magazine exclusive interview series. Today, our guest is Renee Baribeau. Baribeau. Damn it. How do I say it?
No, it's Baribeau. You had it right, like sun bow.
Oh, okay, perfect. Today's our guest, Renee Baribeau. She's an award-winning bestseller author, Winds of Spirit, a dynamic speaker who injects humor and practical wisdom into workshops and presentations. She's a wind whistler, using nature as her guide to assist individuals towards transformation, awakening, and true purpose. Renee is also the marketing and outreach director for the Renewal Health Group, Monterey Behavioral Health, the founder and creative of the founder and creator of the Finding Freedom LGBTQ Symposium and the new emerging trends in behavioral health. Welcome, Renee.
Nice to be here with you, Amelia, and thank you for the work you do in the world as well.
Oh, appreciate that. Well, Renee, I think just to start us off, what's a wind whistler?
Hmm. Well, a wind whistler is an uh, ancient practice that woke up in me about 7 or 8 years ago about how we could start to call in the wind and have a relationship with it. And when you call to these winds, they'll come. And over the years, I've developed wind whistles to actually, not the wind doesn't need me to go out and tell it that I'm ready to have a relationship with it, but it's kind of a symbolic way of letting the wind know that we're ready to enter into this dance. But the Uruk, the a tribe in Turkey, used to have the people who went the nomads to the desert called themselves wind believers, and what they knew was, when the wind would come up and they'd have to, hunker down for a few days. They started to become more in relationship to the winds that were moving through the desert and through their lives. And so a wind whistler in today's terms is somebody who learns to work with the energetics of the wind and all of the teachings in order to adjust their sails and move forward in life in a more easy and graceful way, if there is such a thing of moving through this lifetime right now easily and gracefully.
Well, that's such an interesting point. We are in challenging times. So
Mhm.
is there a particular wind that you're calling on or working with right now or helping your clients with or do they come, more individually, more in the moment?
So I do a 10-month apprenticeship program, and in this program, we made prayer flags, and we in my book there's 34 wind gods and goddesses, and we pulled from our wind sacks, because wind was always carried in sacks, a wind for each month, so that even though the cycles of nature might be the east wind from the spring and the south wind for the summer, the west for the fall, and this is in the northern hemisphere, the north for the winter, within those time frames there's these intercardinal winds or these regional winds that can help steer you along during the in between times. And we've learned over the years, and trust me, at first I thought I was talking about a metaphor, and then I started to summon and call to these winds, and when they came, they had kind of archetypical teachings that were very profound. Like this particular month, my wind of the month is Carrie, and Carrie is about creating creating form from energy through the voice.
Mhm.
And so the lessons that I've been coming up with, in face to face and challenges have been, learning to speak to a wider, bigger, broader audience, because when you're just talking to a group of 10, it's easy. When you start talking to 50, 100, 1,000, you can be misunderstood. You have to really watch your words, because
Mhm.
the breath is the energy of the wind, and the intention is what puts it into form. So using the wind breath and the thinking, right thinking, to create things that are really meaningful in your life is critical at this time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're in such a narrow place for communication. I really hope there are many people who take your apprenticeship and, can start interacting with their I'm sort of conjuring this intent, group intention of holding like a wider space for our own inner wind and our own inner voice. So,
Mhm.
Renee, tell me a little bit about your life. How did the winds find you? How did you find the winds? Like who blew on who first?
Well, it's that old story about, when you think you've lost touch with God, who moved? It's that type of thing. In my 20s, I started seeking, and I'd go to psychic after psychic looking for answers. And there was this one woman, Connie, and she said, Renee, you can go out and sit on the curb because your destiny's going to find you. Then I
Oh,
was in Chile with the Mapuche grandmother, and she said, oh, you have a big destiny. You're going to have to grow into it. And she gave me this name called, was best translation as Triunco, which meant the sound between passing things. At the time, I was, for the next 15 years, trying to figure out what that sound between the passing things was. But if you think about it, that is the wind, when to, that movement of energy that goes between things. And so then about, mm, I don't know, 8 years ago, I was up on Whidbey Island on Evie's Landing. And if you've ever been there, it's probably one of the most beautiful places in the whole world. And I've traveled
mm,
extensively, but I was looking at this craggly old tree, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, the wind, it's the wind. And I thought at first it was a metaphor. Mary Poppins comes over the fence with a bang and a crash on an east wind and leaves with a west wind. And so I started looking for all the wind metaphors. But what I didn't realize was that these metaphors, in all mythology, has a point of origin, but that there was a time when people navigated their life based in nature, and the wind was that way that it spoke to us. In fact, deer will change direction when the wind is coming at them, and hunters know this language of the wind in hunting.
mhm.
And but we forgot it.
Yeah. I was reading on your website, you've got a wonderful blog as well. And you were talking about how the wind languages was also, sort of native to the farming community as well. How does
Absolutely,
that work?
farmers know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. So what keeps you in relationship with the winds?
The wind connects us to everything. For years and years, people would say, oh, we're all connected. And I would go, like, really, come on. What a metaphor for what? But then when I realized, when you're born, you inhale that first wind breath in. As you come out of the womb, you're relying upon your mother's wind, and all of a sudden you need your own wind. And it's when that you take that breath, that life force, that spirit comes into you, and then you breathe. And then when you exhale on your final exhale, you're letting that wind breath go back to nature.
Oh,
What's interesting about our universe is it's a closed system. For 4 billion plus years, this universe of ours is a closed system where the same wind has been circulating around, cleansing itself around the world. So if I send a thought out to you this morning, it's going to hit you this afternoon and
mhm.
go around the world. It's going to be over in Europe in the next day. And then, I mean, all of our messages were always carried on the wind. And it was only our ability to hear them that gave us our traditions in each particular culture, each particular tribe, because there were tribes were gathered around people who spoke the same language.
Mhm.
And the language of the wind that you need in Siberia is different than the language of the wind that you need in Florida. So we became more regionalized by the wind patterns going through our communities.
Oh, that's so interesting. Is there a conception of a larger wind that we all can hear?
I don't know that there really is. You know, in the Greek mythology, Olympus was the place where the winds didn't blow, where
Ah,
the gods congregated. And but in a lot of those old ancient mythologies where they start to try to define a god that needs an intermediary, which was a priest or somebody else for you to interpret it, this where is where the separation started to happen.
mhm. Oh, that's interesting. Are there certain rituals that you do with the wind? Is there a role of ritual in your work?
Absolutely. One of the best rituals that everyone can start to add to their life is taking a wind walk. And a wind walk
Wow.
is a mindfulness practice where you walk to the front door. This one requires you going outside. Or if you're confined to bed, opening your window so that the air comes in. But you go outside, you ask the wind a question, and then you wait till you get a little kiss on your cheek with the wind or some kind of air movement, or absolutely no wind because there's places where the doldrums where the wind doesn't blow. And then you start to walk and you forget your question because questions come and go. And by the end of the walk or by the end of the day or in your dreamscape, you're going to get answers. The wind loves to answer your questions when you ask.
Oh, that is a beautiful ritual. I walk every morning and I try to use it as my waking up. So perhaps every morning I could ask the wind to help, send me a message of awakening that day.
I
Oh,
think it'd be great.
and I love an easy ritual, living a life that I consider, more aligned with my spiritual compass begins to allow me to separate between the real and
Mhm.
the other realms. So I'm curious, in your view of living a spiritually aligned life, what does that look like for you?
Well, for me, it means being in harmony within myself, within my community, and with the people that I serve. The rest of it is just a lot of, it's not like if we were all doing that, a lot of this other noise would be negligible. There would be no need for it because if we were outside tending to our own garden in our own yard in our own, piece of land, or, if you're in the city, your own patch of tree out front, and tending to make sure that your neighbors are okay and that everyone's fed and everyone's healthy, we wouldn't have all of this extra time to be, having these inbreedings and these infightings and all of these other
Yeah.
things because that's the distraction. When we get really clear, what's really important is the tomatoes or the broccoli growing out in my garden, and the rest of it is noise.
Mhm. So, what do you think about, our ability to create meaningful change in our local communities? Do you include that in kind of the space of our garden?
I
In
do.
terms, yeah, I was hearing that as well. So tell me, Renee, you're just you have such a fascinating perspective. And I love the offerings that you've been asked to bring forward in the world. But what is the Renee behind your door? Like, what are some of your hobbies and maybe interests behind the whispers of the wind?
I've always been a practical person, and that's where a practical shaman came in, but it's kind of redundant because all shamanism really was practical. It was about, the healing of the community, the food and all of that. But so I've always been a businesswoman as well, which I love. So that's why about 8 years ago, I ended up working at an addiction treatment center and doing marketing and outreach. And so, the creating events has always been a part of who I am and what I love to do. I was a chef in my earlier life, so creating food rituals and things like that. We're having people. It was for me. I think the cooking good was just the way that I could gather people. I've always been a people gatherer, but in my own life, um, I'm trying to love writing again. After you write one book and it really sends you to a loop when you realize, okay, yes, I'm a best-selling Hay House author and even a Nautilus Gold author. It's like, okay, but you know what it takes. So it's like, okay, where do
Yeah.
I get the juice to write that next book? Um, so I do it through, walking, and I've taken up to gardening. I bought this piece of land that has about a half an acre, and there's plenty of room on it. And this year I've been building structures. Like
Oh,
I built a new little tiny house, and now I'm building a bigger tiny house. And I've been having so much fun. I'm a creator, so building has been like a real interest of mine this year, and that takes up a lot of time.
ah, I love that metaphor too, Renee, because I'm seeing you on one side of your life kind of creating through the wind, and then right on the other side of this is creating in wood and steel, and it's like it just feels so natural um that the frequency of your creation is getting heavier and heavier and heavier as you go on. It's really cool.
Well,
So,
one part of the wind is that all of the creation stories go back to the wind,
uh-huh.
and there's wind in every single creation story. So in my more advanced work, we talk about the dynamic processes of creation, which are styles of creativity and creating. And I happen to be a chaos creator where I gather the stuff from out there and bring it together. Other people might do it from more process order. There's, 5 or 6 of them that we work with as dynamics of how we create, because the important part is that about 14,000 years ago we were stripped of our magic,
Mm.
and the only way we're going to get through this end of the Holocene into the Anthropocene is to remember that we're magical. It's our inherent right and responsibility to be magicians and to know that we have a direct connection with source, which is creation energy.
I love that. I love that. Oh, I do. I'm sort of a whimsical person by nature. So the idea of you giving me and perhaps those listening in this moment to remember our magic is just it's sort of an invitation I want to just sit with a minute. Oh, feels really beautiful. So I'm curious also because I know that you're an amazing teacher and you have a great apprenticeship that's been going on for quite a long time. So, what encourages you to lead others towards the wind? How did that become part of your calling here?
Well, one time I was doing the 12 steps of AA at one point. And when I first got there, I was there like, the woman's there. The only reason I'm taking you through these steps is so that you can be of service to others. And
Mm,
at the time, I was thinking, the only thing I want to do is get out of pain. But
yeah.
then by the time that I made, all of the amends and, did all of the forgiveness work, the next thing I know, I was leading a group of people who were in Overeaters Anonymous through the steps. And it was certainly by chance that someone called me. I'm there like, I'm a chef. I don't know anything about, overeating. And so I learned that the spiritual principles are spiritual principles. But I think I said earlier in the call that for years called psychics and astrologers and everyone for guidance. Once I really understood when I called the wind that I knew the wind had my back, I
Mm,
felt that same shift that I felt from being in pain to then being of service, from being the explorer to being certain that the answer was always in the wind. We just forgot.
oh,
Then there was no other choice but to share it with other people.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. In your blog, you also talk about the body as a compass. And so I was hearing that when you were sharing about, helping people to kind of move in their own direction. And you also have a concept of your magnetic north. So I'm curious what does that mean for the body to be your compass and staying aligned to your magnetic north? What is that for you in regards to the wind?
At first, you hear all the time, again, these slogans that you just hear and you don't know what they mean. Everyone's like, are you going true north? Well, true north is actually, 13 or 14 degrees. There's not the magnetism of the earth. When I started to pull it apart, I'm there like, okay, what is it, true north or magnetic north? And what I realize is that we're aligned to the magnetic pull of the earth, which is changing and moving degrees
Mm,
as the earth tilts and changes. So if the earth changes and tilts by a few degrees every few hundred years, wouldn't you rather be moving and changing with the earth than some this is where you're heading? So it's really about fully engaging into your body, because our bodies
mhm.
are like our Teslas that we're driving through the world with, and so you take it in for the oil change and the tune up. So if your body's not in alignment with your soul's purpose, you find yourself unable to complete your mission. For example, like if you're really too tired to get out of bed, how are you going to share a message of hope? How are
Yeah.
you going to show up in your garden? So that your body really has all of the information encoded in it to really help navigate this earth plane that we're all living in, and including the mind, which has the ability to then travel out to the other realms and connect you and all of that. So a lot of times when I was early in my shamanic work, I would see people, and most of them weren't home in their own bodies. They're through soul loss or trauma. It's hard to stay in this body because, in trauma, we'll check out.
Yeah.
And that becomes a safer place for a lot of people to live. But to be fully embodied in yourself and be able to make decisions based on being planted like a tree with deep roots into the magnetic field. Because imagine you're 80% water, and like the earth, which is being held by this magnetic pull, it's the magnetism of your own energy field, your own
Mm,
body field, that's keeping you tethered here. And we're all here having an earth experience.
yeah. And I think part of that experience is humor. And I know that you're a very funny person. So I'm just curious, when was the last time you laughed so hard your belly hurt?
So the other day, we start all of our programs with laughter. Like we unmute everybody, because we've been and I can't wait to do it in person coming up real soon.
Yeah.
We unmute everybody and we start to laugh. So the other day, my assistant leads an integration group, and I was over there. I was like really busy, and I was on my lunch hour because they're all on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. And I was listening to everybody else laughing, and here I am making my lunch, and they're all laughing, and I'm over there making my lunch. Well, the next thing you know, I'm laughing too. So, and you can't help yourself. And then the more you hear other people snorting, the more you laugh harder. And so it was just about a week ago at the beginning of one of our classes.
Oh my goodness. I can't even not laugh hearing about laughter. It is such an infectious and lovely and needed medicine for this time. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, Renee, is there anything else that's coming to you from the wind or from the body that you want to share with us today?
Well, the November issue, where I have an article about the family, is uh, I think we need to, that's the community I think we need to get back to.
Uh-huh.
And so I want to just recommend to all of you parents out there, this is such a great practice to start to take a wind walk with your children, to actually go out there and let them feel the power of the wind, because
Mhm.
all of that seeking, all of that searching, once I really connected with the wind spirits, I knew that there was something bigger than me helping all of these changes, all of these things go around. And maybe your children can still hear those messages from the wind a little more clearly than you. So ask them what they're hearing. Ask them what the wind's telling them.
Ugh, Renee, thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time today. This was just so wonderful to get a chance to talk with you.
Thank you, Amelia, for having me, and for Energy Magazine for the work that you do. And I'm just really thrilled to be part of this really wonderful group of people. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee.